This season, I passed multiple bucks on public land in North Carolina and waited on a mature deer, and I learned pretty quickly what that decision actually cost on pressure ground. Going into this season in North Carolina, my mindset was pretty simple. I wanted to focus on killing a mature buck on public land. I knew that meant passing smaller deer, and I was okay with that. At the time, that felt like discipline. I had multiple encounters with smaller bucks that came into range. They weren't bad deer, they just weren't what I was targeting. In my head, I believed that if I stayed patient, a better opportunity would eventually show up. The assumption I was making was that deer movement would stay consistent enough and pressure wouldn't increase fast enough to allow that to happen. I thought if I hunted smart, stay mobile with my saddle system, and played the wind right, I'll eventually intersect a mature buck doing the same things I was already seeing, especially with all of the camera data I was gathering. And I still don't think that decision was reckless. Passing deer on public land isn't wrong. A lot of really good hunters do it. But what I didn't really understand yet was how fragile opportunity really is on pressured ground. That belief the opportunity would eventually repeat is what this season really challenged. Because once pressure increased, everything changed, especially this year in North Carolina. The past couple years, what I've seen on the public land is that it hasn't really been pressured so much because of the CWD that we've recently received in the areas that I've been hunting. So there hasn't been a lot of hunters actually out there. But this year, North Carolina did not require testing, so I saw a lot more hunters out there as soon as muzzleloader opened up. And that's really where this season started to teach me some of the lessons I did not expect. During the off season in these areas, I put a lot of boot leather on the ground. I walked, through all these different terrain features to try and find these little pockets of deer, and I've actually found them. And I found where a couple of nice mature deer that I wanted to target for the 2025 season was. And I attacked this early, in early season. And I was seeing, like I said previously, decent deer, but I wasn't seeing the ones that I wanted to actually take. And I kept being persistent. I kept being patient. I kept being mobile. I tried, I always put the wind in my favor. But I thought if I was in there earlier than everyone else, that I have a better opportunity, which is usually the case. And what I really wish I learned a little bit earlier, because I didn't shoot anything in North Carolina this year. I didn't shoot a doe. I didn't shoot a little buck. I didn't shoot anything because I was so keen on taking a mature deer on public that I kind of lost focus of other hunting that I need to do. To provide for my family, to put food on the table, those kind of things. I was so focused on just targeting a mature deer. And once pressure started to increase, the entire dynamic changed. The access points got busier. Parking areas that were empty started to fill up. I could tell other hunters were moving through the same terrain that I was. I would go a couple miles back deep, and I'll show an example map here. Parking lots over here, I would put boots on the ground, a mile and a half back further, and through steep terrain and thick terrain. All these pine sections here are thick, especially where it's open. It's all briars. It's very hard to navigate through this, and most hunters probably don't want to go through all this stuff. This is macro terrain. This is the mountains. This isn't just hill country. All the movement that I was finding in these drainages and on these topos and these hubs were basically disappearing as the season went on. And I thought that my assumption was that not a lot of hunters are going back in this area from my previous statement, because it's tough terrain to navigate. Looking back, this is where my assumption broke down. I assumed opportunity would repeat itself, that if I kept seeing similar movement, eventually the right deer would step out. Public land doesn't always give you repeatable opportunities, though, especially once pressure ramps up. By the time I realized how much the window has tightened, it was already basically closed. And that's when the season really started to teach me that I hadn't really fully appreciated yet. What I really learned about this season was how much decision making actually matters. When hunting in these areas, it's hard enough to find these pockets of deer and to find the pocket of a mature deer, that every decision that I made had a cost. Like, even though I only went into this certain spot 1 or 2 times to set up a camera and to check the camera, the deer realize my pattern. They realize the entry route that I took. First time I went in, it seemed as though that it was like almost like a foolproof entry. But what I didn't realize and didn't think about is that your scent lingers in this area, and, well, the deer can smell it. They can smell it, a couple of days later, and they can track where I went. Especially in these mountains, that they have such a large vast of land that kind of covers everything. Each ridge could have, a set of oaks. It could have a set of pines. Have for their bedding cover. It can have thickets. It can have water down on the bottom. Like every other, if you look here, there's like, I don't know, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you scroll down a little bit further here, there's a lot of places for these deer to live. And the more that people pressure this area, the more condensed they can get. And I mean, you only got so much land on public to actually hunt before they just totally go into private, especially in these areas, because we can bait in North Carolina. So they feel, especially, mid-rut to, late season, if we got food on the ground, an example, corn, and the acorns are basically eaten up, all the beech trees and everything that have dropped are already eaten up. All they really have left is, stemmy browse. They're going to transition over to the private and eat the corn that's been out since, August. And the second lesson that I learned is that passing deer is still a decision. I've had, nice 5-pointers. I had a lot of forkhorns, I would say, and a couple of spike guys. And I had a really cool looking 4-pointer come out in front of me, and they were young. I mean, they were probably 2.5 years old, and I myself wanted to wait for a mature deer. I didn't want to just take the first thing that I see, being patient, being disciplined, waiting for that deer to come out. And sometimes public land doesn't reward that decision. It has no mercy on you. It doesn't care if you're being disciplined or patient. Public land rewards the right decision for the moment. And maybe looking back on it, maybe taking that 4-pointer, that 5-pointer was the right decision at that moment. Next season, I'll still hunt with my standards, but I think I definitely will evaluate my opportunities differently, especially when I'm hunting in the mountains of North Carolina, and especially in early season, because that's when I saw most of the deer, because they weren't really pressured yet. I want to stack the good decisions, not just chase those perfect ones. I'm documenting the process of learning how to consistently make good decisions on public land, especially pressure public land, and especially mountain deer. If you're in the same phase, stick around. In the next video, I'll break down a Kentucky hunt where I made the opposite decision and why.